Back with another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great day, whatever day it is for you, wherever you are. As always, it is Friday here on the podcast, so we're bringing that good Friday energy to you. This is going to be a good episode for those of you who are interested in multifamily or industrial. We got Jens Nielsen with us on the podcast from Open Doors with an S capital. He does industrial. He has over 2,000 apartment units as well as 100,000 square feet in industrial. So should be a good one. Jens, thanks for hopping on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Gabe. It's be a fun conversation.
Absolutely. I told you right before we got on here, we always like to start with stories. We like to hear how people got to where they are. So why don't you take us to the beginning before you had a single door in real estate and tell us how you got started and how it's been going since then?
Yeah, it started in, well, the revelation came in like 2015, 2016 that I needed to do something different to, start creating income that was decoupled from my time, to start creating some wealth outside of, just putting money into the stock market in my 401k. So kind of the thought came in 2015. The first property was bought in 2016 where we just started investing in smaller, fourplexes and so on in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Started down there kind of small. But then, this is all with our own account, right? Me and my wife's money and so forth. So within the first, year, we had actually bought 3 properties, and then we're kind of out of money. And then we went into doing some joint
Funny how quickly
ventures.
that happens, right?
Yeah, right. I still have one of those first properties. It's great because it's been refinanced. I have no cash in it of my own anymore, and it still produces good cash flow. So then we went into kind of the joint venture space first with a smaller 38 unit, which we also still own. And then we was off to the races in the syndication space, where I started, syndicating stuff starting in 2019 and so on, right? We can definitely dig into different areas of that.
Nice. So yeah, it sounds like a pretty traditional, I would say, quote unquote, traditional trajectory. You started in the small single family to small multifamily rentals, you know, duplexes, triplexes, quads. You from there you kind of graduated to a little bit larger properties. You said 30 units in there. And since then you've been taking on the syndication space. So I'm sure you guys have kind of opened up your what you've been looking at. What kind of range are you looking at now in terms of the unit count?
Yes, I mean the biggest deals we did were in 200 plus unit. We did a 237 unit deal in Phoenix that we also have sold since. So that was probably the biggest one. I mean, lately, it's been in the couple hundred, 100 to 200 unit size. Things have slowed down a little bit in the last couple of years as a lot of investors, because of the interest rates and where things were going. So that caused a little bit of a pause, right, and more into managing what we already have. But right now, if we look at anything, I mean, we're pretty opportunistic. So if something good comes up that makes sense, we may still do it, right? But you know, 50, 100 plus units is typically what we're looking at.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and at some point you decided to change gears a little bit and you looked into industrial. What made you interested in industrial, and how did that first deal go?
Yeah, as you know, dealing with a lot of tenants in an apartment building. I mean, I'm not a property manager, but still, there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of people every month in and out, and collections and all these challenges. And then insurance went kind of nuts. So there was a lot of issues, not issues. There was a lot of um, kind of challenges and headwinds that we saw that made it less attractive to continue to invest in the multifamily space. And we started looking around. So what else is out there? And my partner, who had done kind of commercial or warehousing for a while, said, "Well, let's look at this." And we started looking, and it's like, "Oh, that actually makes sense because instead of having 50, 100, or 200 tenants, you may have one, right? One or two tenants, and it makes it easier to manage. I mean, they typically will do all the maintenance. They're a business, so they know what that all means. So that has been an interesting path to take on. I mean, not without its own set of challenges, but it's uh, it's something that we like to do because it's less hands on.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Now, I mean, I mentioned before I got you and I were talking before the show. We've been looking at industrial ourselves. We do self storage, and industrials like self storage, but with with one door instead of 300. And so I like the idea of it. And so tell me a little. Let's dive deeper, a couple layers deeper into industrial. You mentioned that you look for it sounded like single tenant instead of multi tenant industrial.
So we've done both, right? So the most recent deal we did, if we want to break that down, it was in December of 2024. We closed on that, and that was, what is it, over 30,000 square feet, and it was a business that was kind of shutting down, right? The owners were retiring and they
Mm,
couldn't really sell it, so they just shut down the business and sold the building. So we took on the risk of buying a vacant building, but we
mm,
got it for a good price, right? And then we went in there and did some upgrades to it has an office, and we cleaned out the warehouse space and stuff and so on. Did some upgrades to it while our brokers were marketing the building. We could have split it up if we wanted to, but the office, there was only one office, so it would have been weird to kind of do that. So we ended up finding a telecommunication provider, like somebody who does all the cables and the wiring and all that stuff, who needed the space. So they had a big yard, they could park their trucks out there, it had inside space for all their cables and stuff. So they were a perfect tenant, right? So within I think 3 or 4 months of owning it, we got somebody in there that leased the whole space at a decent rate, with a 4-year lease with automatic increases and stuff like that, right? And it's been pretty easy to deal with them since they took over, because there's a national company, a national tenant, right? So that's pretty nice. We do have another warehouse that does have multi-tenant. That was kind of a Class C, where there's like anything from a few hundred square feet to a few thousand, where we have a mix of tenants in there. With you have some diversity, but also you're dealing with more people and more businesses that way, right? So
so how do you go about? I mean, take me through your buying criteria. How do you find them, and then what specifically are you looking for in the industrial properties that you're looking at? That the ones that you're interested. What kind of criteria are you looking at?
yeah, I mean, we're not out there competing with the Amazons and the 400,000 square feet and 40-foot ceilings and all that stuff, right? We're really looking at that older vintage with lower ceilings. Maybe it's 20 feet, 15, 20 feet ceiling heights. Maybe it's just a little bit more that BC class. But what we're looking for is if it's vacant, we got to get it at a really good price, because we're taking on that risk to find a tenant, right? So we got to get really, if they're ready, and we're talking cap rates in the 8 and 9s, right? We're not talking about 4 and 5 cap rates like you see in apartments. So we're looking at much higher cap rate because of the risk,
Mm,
with the single tenant, you know, and in a decent location, not something that requires a ton of capex, because then that's a lot of money up front. And then with what we have done too, we've even gone in, and say we need a long due diligence period, where we're actually going to try to market the property, so we can try to find a tenant
mm,
before we actually buy the damn thing, right? So have some sort of
mm,
out that way. And if there's already a tenant in there, that's a little tougher, because then you are, the seller, if there's multiple years on that lease, they may require a premium for that. So that's a little bit harder. We like something where there's some sort of upside in that regards, if that makes sense.
yeah. That makes sense. So say you're buying, you just went through one that you bought. It was vacant. You had to release it. How do you go about doing the releasing? Are you guys hiring a broker to do that, or are you guys, you're doing it yourself? Google Ads, Facebook posts. What's the strategy
No,
there?
we use brokers, right? Because it's just, especially if we have a unique space, there's not 100 people standing in line to rent it, right? So brokers is really has been our go-to, right? And that creates another interesting challenge, and maybe people are not aware of that. So let's say you rent something for 4 years, they get all their commission up front, right? So they get their 4-year rent commission. So you may be paying $100,000, $200,000 for a lease sign, and you're like, before you start actually getting the rent income. So that's something to just keep in mind, that you got to have money for those commissions for the brokers up front.
What is the commission for a broker leasing bringing you a tenant for a property?
I think it's maybe 3-4%, something in that range,
Oh,
right?
so it's
So
the same as if they sold it.
yeah, it's not cheap. I can't remember the exact because my partner dealing, but so if you're collecting, I mean, this one deal is $25,000 a month in rent, right? You multiply that by 4 years, and then the 3% is that's a lot of money suddenly you got to come up with, right? So we have to raise that up front so we can pay them, um, and then hopefully the tenant stays for those 4 years, and we don't have to pay another commission until the time is up.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about value add on the industrial side. I mean, you mentioned one of the things you guys look for is just properties that are vacant, and then you get a discount on the purchase price. So outside of just a discounted purchase price, what are the actual things that you do operationally, capex wise, to the property to push that value to force appreciation?
Yeah, and first of all, right, I know depending on where your listeners are from, right, you can go to the Rust Belt of the United States and probably find warehouse space all day, all night long, right, that you don't want to buy. So you have to make sure the market you're in is somewhat constrained with new construction, or the new construction is very expensive, or the occupancy is very high in the market, right? So make sure you understand that. Albuquerque had like a 3 or 4% vacancy rate on industrial, so that made a lot of sense for us. Then to take your question, right? So, um, first of all, like make sure the roof doesn't leak, right? Very basic. I mean, these are older buildings, so just fix up the roof. Maybe do some painting. Maybe you fix up the parking lot. We had to put in new power. So the one we did like 2.5 years ago, we had to put in new power because we had some cannabis growers in there, which is legal in this state. So we had to put a new power in, and water, and so on, right? And we wanted to create a unique separate suites. So we put a little bathroom in and stuff. So you had a self-contained unit. Therefore, we had more because it wasn't contiguous the way the space was built. So that was one way to kind of create that value there. You know, um, we also bought like a flex space, is kind of similar to what you guys are doing with self storage. That was just kind of, it was like eight almost like garage size units next to each other, 1,500-1,600 square feet. We just had to do they were newer. We just had to do a little bit like fix some roof stuff. We put some security systems in, fixed up the parking lot. So it doesn't have to be fancy, because people don't pay for extra granite. If there's a working toilet and there's power and cooling and heating and stuff, they're usually happy, right? The roof doesn't
Yeah.
leak.
Yeah. Yeah, especially on the self-storage side, it's amazing that even small improvements, your tenants will really appreciate, like security. If there's no fencing, if you don't have a security fence around the property, you don't have an automatic gate. It's not a ton of money. It is money, but it's not an extreme amount of money to put that in, and it really does increase your ability to lease up those properties. Um, awesome. So, I mean, industrial, it sounds like relatively new type of asset for you guys. Multifamily really is your bread and butter. 200 or 2,000 units, you said you have under management right now. I'm sure you have gone through the loop on everything you can possibly experience on multifamily. I'm sure you've done it at this point. Tell us about management. How has that gone, and how are you guys making sure that you keep your occupancy rate high?
Yes, I mean, obviously we hire third-party management companies, right? And some of our partners are the property managers that help, right? And what I've really learned is where you buy, and is incredibly important, right? And not so
You
much
said where you buy?
where you buy,
Yeah,
right? And
location.
not
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
much like maybe on one side, the right side of the tracks, even more like certain cities and stuff. I've learned a lot about how certain cities are much more landlord friendly versus tenant friendly, and so forth. And even cities that have point of sales inspections and high taxes, and so forth.
Point
Those
of
are things
sales
that do.
inspections. I've never
You ever heard of
never
that?
dealt I haven't dealt with that. No, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh man, yeah, don't do that, because it's basically in order to transfer a property, the city's building department has to inspect the property and say, oh, there's all these problems with it that need to be fixed by the seller or the buyer, because you get all these violations. So that happens a lot in the
Oh,
Northeast, like Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Pain in your, you know
interesting.
what? Yeah,
So
it's
when you sell a property, you actually have to bring an inspector from the city to verify that it meets current, codes. And then if there are any problems, it has to be rectified before the sale is completed.
no, it doesn't have to be ratified before the sale. This buyer can take on those liabilities, but it sits out there and say, here are the violations on this property. I mean, it can be silly
Ah,
things like a broken light bulb, or a outlet that's missing, or
hmm,
to bigger issues, right? I mean,
yeah.
construction, I mean, safety, huge safety issues. But it really creates an amazing administrative burden, because then the city is just after you while and sometimes they may even hold escrow money back and say, oh, we estimate it's going to cost $15,000 to repair this. They're holding it, or the title company holds it, and you don't get it released until the repairs have been made and so forth.
Hmm,
So those
yeah.
are painful, and so I would definitely advise people to stay away from cities that have those kinds of inspections and stuff like that, because it's just ongoing and
Yeah.
so on.
Pain in the neck. Makes sense.
That's right. So
So
what
it
have
looks
I
like
learned? Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry to interrupt. I mean, you know, it's lots of things around underwriting versus reality. What can tenants actually pay these days, and where do they struggle, and then the realities that you and me and everybody else in the market has faced, from insurance going up and taxes and those things that we all kind of struggle with, right? But on the flip side, right, I mean, certain properties with the right manager, and the on-site manager really makes or breaks the deal. I mean, we had one property that struggled for a while. We got a new manager, and then suddenly it's just so much better. Like, oh my God, it was not the property; it was the property manager that couldn't figure it out, right?
yeah. Yeah, I need to record a whole video on the importance of property management because you're right. I mean, we've dealt with it with our mobile home parks, our RV parks. You have one manager in there, the property's struggling. You get them out, put a new one in there. All of a sudden, the property's great. Nothing happened in the market. Everything's the same. The property's the same, but you got this one change in person that you're actually having to run the property, and it's night and day. And on the flip side, when you realize somebody is not a fit and they're not doing a good job in a role, the quicker you can come to that realization and remove them and have somebody new in that position, the better it is. We The first mistake we made a long time ago for one of our parks is we realized our on-site property manager was a bad fit, and we just held on to her, trying to figure out a way that we can get her to improve her performance. And we worked with her and worked with her. Nothing ever changed. It always was bad. But like 6 months went by, things just kept going downhill until we finally pulled the trigger and changed property management companies. And that's the wrong way to do it. If you can give somebody one chance, but if they continue to make mistakes, you just gotta cut the cord and move on.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, it looks like we have run down the clock. We're rounding out to the 20-minute mark, so it is time to move on. Before I do move on, I did want to ask. I noticed on your website you do coaching. I'm assuming within the real estate space. So I want to ask, when you do that type of coaching, what do you typically see when people start out, and how do you coach them to get on or to get to the next level?
Yeah, so yeah, real estate mentoring. I also do, high performance coaching. This is really around mindset and everything else. And I see a lot of people, they have this desire, oh, I want to invest in real estate, but it's not really important enough to them, so they don't take the necessary action, right? It's a nice to have, but then when it gets difficult, they're like, whatever. So I like to work with people and understanding what's the why behind this. Why is this so important to them? So we can, get clarity. Is real estate really the thing, or is it just something that you picked out of the blue, right? To really work through all that. And if we decide, or they decide real estate is the right approach, yeah, then we'll coach through everything that's necessary to get there. So it's not just about underwriting deals and calling brokers and all that stuff. It's really getting deep into why is this important to you. And when they understand that, then we can move forward. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Cool. I love it. All right, let's move on to the quick question round. You ready?
Yep.
Starts with education. I need two recommendations. It could be a book recommendation you've read, a conference you've gone to, a mentorship program you've been a part of. But I just need two recommendations: one for general life wisdom, and then one for real estate.
Okay, so I will say the High Performance Habits by Brendan Bouchard. That's a great book on just this high performance mindset that we have. A So I don't have a specific recommendation on like the real estate side. I would say get involved in a group of people that is doing what you're doing, right? So it could be a mentorship or a coaching program or something, but get around other people, Hey, I recommend myself, but there's those groups out there, just make sure you understand what they're offering, what the costs are, and what their track record is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually something I wish I did when I got started. When I got started, I bought a course and I did I did the course, but I didn't have somebody there to guide me who had been through the experience, and I just kind of figured it out on my own. It ended up working out, and I'm glad. But I really do feel like the timeline would have been compressed had I had a mentor, a coach, or anything like that in my corner. So I absolutely do recommend that to you guys out there who are just starting and you're thinking about getting involved in real estate. Go out there, get a mentorship program, get a coach, whatever it is. Just get around people who are doing the same thing that you're trying to achieve. I guarantee you're going to see a lot more success, and it'll come a lot quicker than if you had done it on your own. All right, next question is for your younger self. Let's go back to the Jens who was just starting so many years ago. I think you said 2015 or something like that. Go back to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
Partner with people early on. I thought I could figure it all out by myself, but partnership was really that took it to the next level.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Our next question is about the U.S. It's a big place. There is a lot of opportunity out there. Give me the single metro you're most excited about investing in.
I think right now it'd be my hometown, be Albuquerque, New Mexico. Or I don't live there, but it's close because I feel like I like a little bit more control over it, and seems to got
Yeah,
they just announced a $1 billion fusion. I don't know, research facility that they're going to be building there. So that's pretty exciting.
That sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. Albuquerque is one of those cities you just don't generally hear investors specifically talking about being excited about investing there. But I know it's a good city. I know they have, good numbers, good rates. And so, yeah, I mean, if it's your backyard, I would absolutely backyard. If it's a place that has good deals here in Seattle's my backyard. Seattle has no good deals. I mean, they're out there, but I like to look elsewhere. But yeah, Albuquerque, great metro. All right. Next question is about finding deals. It all starts with getting in contact with the seller and penning that purchase agreement. So, what's your favorite way to generate leads and find new deals?
This is the interesting piece, right? The way I have succeeded there, and this is why I started thinking about partners, is that has usually been on my partner's plate to do that. They have actually been helping with that. Now, I will say that back in the day, like we're talking, 8, 10 years ago, I did do direct mail campaign. I have a 16 unit deal that I still own through direct mail, right? So I think that still works. It takes time and effort. Um, but if you're trying to maybe not compete with all the other buyers and the brokers and everything else, you may want to do something like that. Now that doesn't work on a 200 unit deal, but something smaller could be an interesting approach that has worked for me.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of direct mail. Direct mail, cold calling is obviously a really easy one. If you're trying to do direct to seller, cold calling is great. But direct mail, PPC, any of that stuff, I absolutely love it. I will say, if any of you guys are if you're trying to do direct to seller, you're not trying to go through a broker, have at least, and I'm saying at least $5,000 to $10,000 in your pocket that you can use for marketing, because it takes more than you actually think to get those deals start to flow. You can't put $100, $1,000 out there and expect a return. You really do need to spend some cash, and I would say 10,000 minimum to get something that to get some kind of traction going. So those gurus out there who say you can do it in like $1,000, that's just, at least it hasn't been my experience.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is about lessons learned. Not every deal we get into goes the way we expect it. In fact, pretty much every time something goes wrong, and that's when we get to learn a lesson. So take us back to a deal that went a little bit sideways for you, and then what was the lesson you pulled from it?
Yeah, I think we are selling some deals right now that are not didn't go quite as well, and I think a couple of lessons there were a little bit over leveraged, with some
Mm.
shorter term debt. So I think the one thing is like be very very careful about short term debt, because that was a 3 year plan. Always everything looked good 3 years ago, but right now it's just a different market that's causing all kinds of challenges for us. So be careful about short term debt. Be careful about your rent comes, right? What are you comparing the rents to? Are those true, right? Or are you just kind of pulling too wide of an area and it doesn't really? So those are some of the painful lessons that I have experienced myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't compare Class A rents to Class C rents. You really have to be comparing apples to apples, and interest rates. Nobody knows where they're going to go. And if
Yeah.
anybody says they know, they don't. So it's really difficult to get, or at least you need to be conservative when you're looking at your debt. But sometimes things go 100% right, and there's deals that stand out in our mind as the highlight reel, as the thing that kind of everything went well, and it stands out as one of our favorite deals. So take us to that deal. What was it, and tell us the story about it.
Yeah, that was the one I think I mentioned early on. It was in Phoenix, 200 and some 20. I can't make maybe I can't make a exact number. I think we did a 3.5x in like a 3 year, 350% return on that investment for our
Nice.
investors. So that was
In 3 years
huge,
too.
and
That's great.
I'm so glad we sold it too, because it was right before the market kind of shifted in interest rates. So I don't know how those buyers are doing, but we we got out of it right in the right time. So
Nice. There you go. And sometimes luck is on your side when it does. When it shows up, you take it because no, you never say no to luck. That's for sure.
that's right.
All right, and that leads us to the very last question. This is for the listeners. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. This is a two-parter. Where can they find you, and then what can they expect when they reach out?
Yeah, so I think my best, it's actually jensnielsen.us. It's kind of my best website now. It has linked to my coaching, my real estate stuff, and they can expect, my phone number is on there, my email is on there. They can book a free call. So if anybody want to talk to me, just go to jensnielsen.us and get in touch there.
Perfect. I'll put that link in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out to Jens, all you got to do is click the little more in the description. It's going to pull down that full description, and in there you can find his links. All right, man. That wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Thanks, Gabe. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. For everybody who's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me, Gabe at therealestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just leave us a review or a comment on the video. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.